Harlow Creek, Texas, 1884. Samuel Grant had been in Harlow Creek for 4 days and had not yet found work when he saw the old man with the crate. The crate was clearly too heavy for one person. He could see this from across the main street, the way the man had it lifted halfway to the wagon bed and had paused in the posture of someone reassessing the situation. Samuel crossed the street. "Let me get that," he said. They lifted the crate together and set it in the wagon bed. Samuel checked the load, 2 more crates and a rolled length of fencing wire, and without being asked, picked up the second crate. "Don't need to do that," the old man said. "I know," Samuel said. He loaded it anyway. They had the wagon loaded in 10 minutes. The old man looked at the wagon. He looked at Samuel. He had sharp blue eyes that did not appear old at all, the eyes of someone who had been paying attention to people for 60 years and had gotten very good at it. He smiled, not the polite smile of a man saying thank you, but the smile of a man who has just made a decision. "My name is Earl Calloway," he said. "I've got a ranch south of town. Good fencing work available if you want it." Samuel shook his hand. "Samuel Grant. I'll take it." Earl nodded. He climbed up onto the wagon box and picked up the reins. Then he paused with the air of someone who had almost forgotten to mention something. He looked down at Samuel. "One more thing," he said. "My daughter needs a man like you." Samuel looked up at him. Earl looked back with the blue eyes, which were now doing something that was not quite a smile but was everything that came before one. "Just thought you should know," Earl said. He clicked at the horse. The wagon moved. Samuel stood in the middle of the Harlow Creek Main Street and watched the wagon go, and held that sentence the way you hold something you don't quite know what to do with. He had been in this town for 4 days. He had helped a stranger load 3 crates because the crates were heavy and there was nobody else. And now he had been informed by that stranger that his daughter needed a man like him. He did not know the daughter. He did not know what Earl Calloway's assessment of him was worth. He knew the East Fence work paid fair wages and that he needed the work. He walked to the boarding house to get his tools. He thought about it the whole way there. Earl Calloway had been trying to find his daughter a husband for 3 years. This was not, he would clarify to anyone who asked, because he believed his daughter needed a husband. Nora Calloway was 26 years old and taught the older children at Harlow Creek School, and had more opinions per square foot than any 3 other people in the county combined, and was by any measure perfectly capable of managing her own life. He was trying to find her a husband because she was lonely. He could see it the way fathers see things, not in what she said, but in the specific quality of the evenings when she came home from school and sat at the kitchen table with her book, and was there, but not quite entirely there. He had been lonely himself after her mother died, and he recognized the quality of it. The 3 previous attempts had not gone well. The first candidate had expressed the opinion during his second Sunday dinner that a school teacher was a fine thing for a woman to do until she was married. Nora had thanked him for the dinner and suggested he see himself out. The second had made the specific error of telling Nora she was very smart for a woman. She had looked at him for a moment and then said, "What an interesting thing to say," in the tone Earl had learned over 26 years meant the conversation was over. The third had been a perfectly adequate young man who had, upon meeting Nora, properly understood that he was not the right person for this particular woman, and had said so directly, which Earl actually respected. He had been watching for a 4th candidate with more specific criteria. He was not looking for someone impressive or wealthy. He was looking for someone who helped strangers load their wagons when the crate was too heavy and there was nobody else around, not because it would be noticed, but because it was the thing to do. He pulled his wagon south out of Harlow Creek and thought there was no harm, he decided, in putting a good man close enough for Nora to notice. The rest was above his authority, but the noticing, that he could arrange. Samuel arrived at the Calloway Ranch the following Monday. Earl had given him directions on the street and a start time of 7, and the information that there was a fence line on the east pasture that needed 2 weeks of attention. The bunkhouse had a room, and supper was at 6. What Earl had not given him was any additional information about the daughter. Samuel had decided, on reflection, that the comment on the street was the particular humor of someone who had been watching life for 60 years and found it amusing to say the thing out loud that everyone else was thinking. He had decided not to take it literally. He revised this decision on Monday morning when he came to the kitchen door at 6:30 for the coffee Earl had said would be ready, and found that the person making it was not Earl. She was 26 years old with dark hair pinned up and the expression of someone who was thinking about something else and had been interrupted. "You must be the fencing man," she said. "Samuel Grant," he said. "I was told there would be coffee." "There is coffee," she said. She poured a cup and handed it to him across the counter. "My father mentioned he'd hired someone." "He mentioned he had a daughter," Samuel said. She looked at him. He held the coffee cup and held her gaze, not performing ease, but being honest, because the alternative was pretending he hadn't heard what Earl had said on the street, and pretending seemed like a poor foundation for being in someone's house for 2 weeks. "What exactly did he say?" she said. "He said his daughter needed a man like him," Samuel said. He said it the way people say something they've been thinking and finally decided to say out loud. She looked at him for a long moment. "My father has been trying to find me a husband for 3 years, she said. "I gathered that," Samuel said. "He's transparent about it," she said. "It's one of his better qualities," he said. She set the coffee pot down. "Mr. Grant, I want to say something directly." "I'd prefer that," he said. "My father means well. He thinks he's being helpful. He is not, in fact, being helpful, because I am not a problem that requires solving, and I am not a property that requires a new owner." She held his gaze. "I am a school teacher who lives in this house and makes her own coffee, and I would appreciate being treated accordingly." "Understood," Samuel said. He finished the coffee. He set the cup on the counter. "Thank you, Miss Calloway," he said. "I'll be at the east fence." He went to the east fence. She stood in the kitchen for a moment after he left. She thought about a man who had listened to what she said and had said, "Understood," and had thanked her for the coffee and gone to work. That was not what the other 3 had done. The east fence needed more than 2 weeks. Samuel could see this within the first hour of the first morning. Fence work had a way of revealing additional fence work once you started looking properly. The section Earl had described was a genuine problem, the sections adjacent to it were problems in development. He made a list. He brought it to Earl at the end of the first day. Earl read the list. He looked at the fence line. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I could have fixed the section you described and moved on." Samuel said it would have needed doing again in a year. Earl folded the list and put it in his coat pocket. "How long for all of it?" 6 weeks, if the weather holds." Earl folded the paper slowly. "I'll pay you for 6 weeks, he said, with the satisfaction of a man whose plan is proceeding better than he expected. "Earl," Samuel said. "Yes. I'm going to do the fence work because the fence needs doing and the pay is fair. Not for any other reason." Earl looked at the fence line, then at Samuel. "Understood," he said. He went back to the house. Inside, Nora was at the kitchen table with her lesson plans. Earl came in whistling. "He's staying 6 weeks, he said." She did not look up. "The fence must be in bad shape," she said. "Terrible shape," Earl said. He was still whistling when he went upstairs. The second day, she brought lunch to the east fence, not for any reason she was ready to examine, simply because she had made extra and it seemed wasteful not to. She set the pail on the fence post and said, "There's enough if you haven't eaten." He had not eaten. He was working a section near the creek where the posts had rotted at the base. After the fence troubles of the previous year, the cutting wars that had pushed the Texas legislature to act in January, most ranchers had become particular about where every new line ran. Earl was no exception. Samuel worked with the economy of someone who had been doing physical work long enough not to waste motion. "You found the creek section," Nora said. "Yesterday morning," he said. "I didn't mention it to Earl because I'd already put it on the list." "He'll be pleased," she said. "He'll be pleased because it means I'm here longer," Samuel said, without bitterness, just a fact. She looked at him. "You know what he's doing?" "Yes," he said. "Does it bother you?" "It would bother me," he said, "if I were here for the reason he wants me here. I'm here for the fence." She looked at the creek, then at the fence work he had done that morning, clean, properly done. "It's good work," she said. She sat on the fence rail and looked at the creek and did not go back to the house immediately, which was not something she had planned. Harlow Creek said quite a lot. Earl had mentioned the new fencing man to approximately 9 people by Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday the Reverend's wife knew. By Thursday, Martha at the dry goods store had formed a complete theory. That Earl Calloway had hired the young man specifically, which was partially true, that the young man knew about it, which was also partially true, and that Nora Calloway would have something to say about all of it. Martha asked Earl directly on Friday. "Is this what I think it is, Earl?" "I hired a fencing man," Earl said. "The east fence is in terrible shape. He bought his supplies and left." Martha watched him go and said to the woman behind her, "He's doing it again." The woman said she had heard there was a young man from Tennessee. Martha said yes, and that he had helped Earl with a crate on Tuesday without being asked. The woman said that was a good sign. Nora heard about the conversation on Saturday from a student's mother, who mentioned it in the tone of someone conveying information they believe is relevant. Nora thanked her and went home and found Earl on the porch. "Martha Hale told the whole town that you hired the fencing man specifically," she said. Earl looked at the yard, the east fence, then at her. She held his gaze with the brown eyes that had been reading people clearly since she was 12. "You put me in a position," she said. "The whole town is watching now." "The whole town was watching anyway," he said. "They watch everything. This is different." She stopped, looked at the yard. "If nothing comes of it, which is the most likely outcome, I look like a woman whose father is so concerned about her that he hires men to meet her." Earl was quiet. "Is that so different from the truth?" he said. She looked at him. "That's not a fair thing to say." "No," he said. "It's a true one." They sat on the porch. The Harlow Creek evening came in around them, cattle in the far pasture, light going gold over the south field. "He knows what you're doing," she said finally. "I know he does," Earl said. "I respect that." She looked at the south field. "He's staying 6 weeks," she said. "Terrible fence," Earl said. She went inside. She did not slam the door, which meant Earl knew she was thinking rather than angry. She found him reading on Wednesday evening of the second week, not her book, he had his own, a worn copy she couldn't identify from the porch where she was sitting with her lesson plans. He was at the far end of the porch in the chair that caught the last evening light, hat beside him, boots off, with the quality of a man who has done physical work all day and found the exact right way to end it. She had not expected him to be a reader. "What are you reading?" she said. He held up the cover. She crossed the porch to see it. It was George Eliot, Middlemarch. "Third time," he said. "It's better each time." She looked at the book, then at him, and sat down in the other chair. "Where did you come across George Eliot in Tennessee?" "My mother," he said. "She had the complete works. When she died, I kept the books. My father kept the land. I sold the land when he died. Kept more books." She looked at him. He was reading again. She looked at her lesson plans, she was not reading them. "What do you think of Dorothea?" she said. He considered this seriously. "I think she spends a long time being wrong about what she needs," he said, "and then she figures it out. But the figuring out costs her considerably." "Some people would say she ends up with less than she deserves," Nora said. "Some would say she ends up with exactly what she chose," he said. "I think those are both true simultaneously." She looked at the evening light on the south field. "Mr. Grant," she said. "Samuel," he said. "Samuel," she said, "what did you mean to do before you came here?" He lowered the book. "I meant to find a place that felt right to settle," he said. "I sold the Tennessee land because it wasn't mine, it was my father's land, and he's gone now. I want something that's mine." He paused. "I don't know yet what that looks like." She held her lesson plans. "I do," she said. He looked at her. "The school," she said, "the students, the particular way October light comes through the east window of my classroom in the afternoon." She held his gaze. "I know exactly what mine looks like." "Yes," he said. "I can see that." They read in the evening light for a while, she her lesson plans and he his Middlemarch, and the porch was quiet in the way that is comfortable rather than empty, which was its own kind of information. Earl invited every neighboring family within 4 miles to a Saturday supper. He announced this on Thursday. Nora looked at him across the breakfast table. "How many people?" "Just the neighbors," he said. "Earl, how many?" "The Garfields, the Prestons, the widow Mercer and her son, the Hendersons." She counted. "That's 14 people." "Neighbors," he said. He buttered his toast with the serenity of a man who has made an excellent decision. Samuel appeared in the kitchen doorway. He read the table in the way of someone who had grown up with strong personalities and had learned to read rooms quickly. "What's happening Saturday?" "Neighbors for supper," Earl said. Samuel looked at Nora. Nora looked at Samuel. Both looked at Earl. "Earl?" Samuel said. "You are a very transparent man." "I know," Earl said. He ate his toast. The supper was exactly what Earl said and exactly what everyone knew it was. 14 neighbors arrived with the warmth of people who like each other and have also come to observe something. They observed Samuel helping Earl carry the extra table from the barn. They observed him talking to Tom Garfield about fence wire with the ease of a man who knows the subject and is interested in the other man's opinion. They observed with great interest that he was seated next to Nora at supper. Nora had sat next to him deliberately. She had not examined this until after the supper, when the neighbors had gone and Earl had retreated to bed with the speed of a man who has engineered something successfully and wishes to be nowhere near the conversation that follows. She was washing the dishes. Samuel was drying them. This had also not been planned. "The whole county is going to know about this by Monday," Nora said. "The whole county already knows," Samuel said. "Martha Hale has been briefed." She handed him a plate. He dried it. "Samuel," she said. "Yes. If my father hadn't said what he said on the street, if you had just come to the ranch for the fence work and nothing else, would you have noticed me?" He held the plate and thought about it honestly. "Yes," he said. "The coffee was very good, and you said what you meant and you didn't apologize for it. I noticed that." She handed him another plate. "When did you start noticing me?" He said not the same question back, something more direct. "Is that inconvenient?" "Not quite," she said, "but close." "Considerably," she said. She handed him the last plate. He dried it and set it on the stack. Neither of them said anything for a moment. The Harlow Creek night was outside, the kitchen was warm, the dishes were done, and neither of them had an explanation for why they were still standing there. "Same time tomorrow," he said. She looked at him. "For the fence," she said. "For the coffee," he said. She turned back to the basin. Yes, she said. The problem came from Samuel, which Nora had not expected. She had expected it to come from her, from the architecture of caution she had built over 3 years of being told by well-meaning people she was complicated, and by not-so-well-meaning people that she was difficult. He knocked on the kitchen door on a Tuesday morning before coffee and stood in the doorway with the expression of a man who has decided to say something before he changes his mind. "I need to tell you something," he said. She put the coffee on. "Tell me." "I stayed because the fence needed it." "That's true. But I could have done 2 weeks, noted the additional problems, given Earl the list, and gone on." He held her gaze. "I didn't go on. And I think you deserve to know that I know the difference between those two things." She sat down across from him. "What are you saying?" she said. "I'm saying I've been here 3 weeks, and I'm going to stay 3 more, and at the end of 6 weeks I'm going to have to decide where to go next," he said, "and the reason that decision is harder than it should be is not the fence." She looked at the table, then at him. "Samuel," she said. "Yes, I know." "I know," she said. He looked at her. "I've known for a week," she said. "Then why haven't you said anything?" She looked at the window, at the east field, at the fence line getting cleaner and tighter every day. "Because you're leaving in 3 weeks," she said, "and because what happens after that isn't something I know how to plan around." He was quiet. "I don't know what happens after that," he said honestly. "I know," she said. "That's the problem." The coffee was ready. She got up and poured 2 cups, put one in front of him. They drank their coffee and looked at the window, and the morning was outside, and neither of them had an answer for the 3 weeks, which was the most honest thing that had passed between them. Earl found Samuel at the east fence on Thursday afternoon. He leaned on the rail. Samuel kept working. "I owe you an apology," Earl said. Samuel looked at him. "I put you in a position," Earl said. "And I put Nora in a position. I did it because I could see something in 30 seconds on a Tuesday morning that 3 years of looking hadn't found. But seeing something in a man doesn't give me the right to decide for my daughter." He looked at the fence work, the cleanest east pasture he had seen in 20 years. "I was wrong about my authority, not about the man." Samuel set the wire down. "What did you see?" "On the street," Earl thought about it, 30 seconds. "A young man who didn't look around first, who just did it because the crate was heavy and there was nobody else." Samuel looked at the east pasture. "Earl," he said. "Yes. What did you mean to do with that after you saw it?" Earl looked at the south field. "I meant to put a good man close enough for Nora to notice," he said. "The rest was above my authority. I knew that. I told myself there was no harm in the introduction." He paused. "There wasn't harm, but there was presumption. And I owe you both an honest accounting of that." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "I like her," he said. "I know," Earl said. "She's the most interesting person I've met in 3 years of moving," Samuel said. "She says what she means. She reads George Eliot and understands it. She knows exactly what her life looks like and she doesn't apologize for knowing it." He stopped. "I don't know what comes next," he said. "I don't have land here. I don't have anything here except a good fence and 3 weeks of suppers." Earl looked at him. "The south pasture fence is in similar shape to where the east was when you started," he said. "I noticed," Samuel said. "Once I finished the east line, I could take a look at it." Earl nodded slowly. "What I'm offering is ranch work that needs doing," he said. "Permanent, if it suits. I'm 62 years old, and the land deserves more than I can give it alone." He held Samuel's gaze. "What you do with the other part is entirely your business." Samuel looked at the east fence, clean and tight from one end to the other, then at the south pasture beyond, then at Earl. "I'd want to talk to her," he said, "before anything." "Obviously," Earl said. He walked back toward the house. He was whistling. Samuel watched him go and thought, "This man is absolutely impossible and also completely right, and I do not know what to do with either of those facts." Then he picked up the wire and went back to work, because the fence still had 3 days in it, and there was no point in stopping before things were done correctly. He found her at the school on Friday afternoon. She was at the blackboard erasing the day's lesson, the room empty, the afternoon light coming through the east windows at the angle she had described. She heard him come in and turned. "Class is over," she said. "I know," he said. "I came for you." She set the eraser down. "My father talked to you," she said. "Yes." "What did he say?" "He offered me work," Samuel said, "permanent ranch work. He also said what you do with the other part is entirely your business." She was quiet. "And what is the other part?" she said. He crossed the room and stood in front of her in the afternoon light, the October light through the east windows, the smell of chalk and old wood, the rows of small desks. "I'm going to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to know that the answer has no bearing on whether I take the work. The fence is done regardless." "Ask," she said. "Would you be willing to let me court you properly?" he said. "Not because your father wants it, not because the town is watching. Because I've been here 3 weeks and I don't want to leave at the end of 6 weeks and spend the next 3 years thinking about Middlemarch and excellent coffee." Nora held his gaze. She thought about 3 years of being told she was complicated. She thought about a man who had said, understood, and meant it, who had stayed longer than the fence required, who read Middlemarch for the 3rd time and thought Dorothea's figuring out cost her considerably. "Yes," she said simply, the way she said everything that mattered. He nodded. He almost smiled, the real one, the kind that arrived without preparation. She saw it. She thought, there it is, that is the face underneath the careful one. "I should tell you," she said, "that my father is going to be insufferable about this." "I know," he said. "He will say I told you so approximately 400 times. "I expect so," he said. She looked at the east window light, her light, the one she had described as specifically hers. "Same time Monday," she said. "For the fence," he said. "For all of it," she said. Earl Calloway was on the porch when they came back, sitting in the chair that caught the evening light with his coffee and the expression of a man performing complete indifference with very limited success. They came up the steps and sat in the other 2 chairs. Earl looked at the south field. Nora looked at her father. "Say it," she said. He looked at her, then at Samuel, then at his coffee. "I told you," he said. "There it is," Samuel said. "That's one," Nora said. 399 to go. Earl smiled, the real one, the one that went all the way to the blue eyes. He drank his coffee. The Harlow Creek evening came in around the porch. He had been watching his daughter for 26 years and had been watching this young man for 3 weeks, and what he saw now on that porch was the specific satisfaction of a man who was right about the material and is now watching the material do exactly what he believed it would. He went inside without another word. He was whistling. The courtship looked nothing like what Harlow Creek had been imagining. Harlow Creek had imagined flowers and Sunday calls and the various performances that attended formal courtship in the county. What it got instead was Samuel finishing the east fence on a Wednesday, starting on the south pasture fence on Thursday, and appearing at the Calloway supper table every evening in the specific manner of someone who has always been there. He and Nora took walks on Saturday afternoons, not to be seen walking, but because they both had things to say that required movement to say them properly. They talked about Tennessee and about Texas and about what it meant to belong to a place. They talked about Middlemarch in the way of 2 people who have found someone else who has read the same book with the same seriousness. In November, Samuel came to the school to replace a window frame that had been letting cold air in since October. He came after the students had gone. Nora was at her desk marking papers. She heard him working at the window and kept marking papers. After a while, she set down her pencil. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I noticed it last week," he said. He fitted the new frame into place and checked the seal. "It's going to be a cold winter." She watched him work the way she had watched him work at the east fence, the economy of movement, the checking and rechecking, the refusal to leave something half done. She had not planned to say what she said next. "Samuel," she said. He looked at her. "Why did you stop, in Harlow Creek specifically? You said you'd been moving for 3 years. You came here for work, but there's work in other towns." He looked at the window frame. "I'd been moving for 3 years," he said, "because moving was easier than the alternative." He held her gaze. "Every time a place started to feel like something, I left. Not because I was unhappy, because I was afraid of what it meant if I stayed and then lost it." He looked at the window. "Like Tennessee." She held her pencil. "My father saw something in you in 30 seconds, she said." He looked at her. "What do you see?" he said. She looked at the papers on her desk, then at the east window, her light. "I see a man who went back to check his work," she said. "Every time." He came away from the window and stood in front of her desk. "Nora," he said. "Yes." "I'm not going to leave," he said, not a promise decorated with sentiment, just the fact of it, stated the way he stated everything that was true. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, "I know." She picked up her pencil. He went back to the window. The seal was perfect. He had checked it twice. December came to Harlow Creek with the cold that Earl had been preparing for. The south pasture fence was finished by the last week of November, clean, properly done, better than it had been since the ranch was built. Samuel moved his tools to the barn repairs that Earl had been putting off since summer. Nora marked papers at the kitchen table. Samuel came in from the barn at 5 with the cold on his coat. Earl made coffee at 6. They ate supper at the same table every evening and talked about the school and the cattle and the fence and the books and the things that had happened in the county that week. And the table had a quality that Earl had not felt at supper in 8 years. On a January evening after Earl had gone to bed, Nora and Samuel were on the porch in coats watching the stars come out over the south pasture. "You came here looking for something that belonged to you," she said. "I remember," he said. "Have you found it?" He looked at the pasture, at the south fence that was his work, at the barn that was partly his work, at the house where the lights were on. He looked at her. "I've found where I belong," he said. "That's not quite the same thing." She looked at the stars. "No," she said, "I think it's better." He held her gaze, she held his. The January night was cold and clear and enormous around them, and inside the house the lamp was on in the kitchen, and the coffee was still warm on the stove. "Nora," he said. "Yes." "I'd like to ask your father if he'd be all right with us marrying," he said. "Not because he needs to give permission, because he's your father, and I think he deserves to be asked." She looked at the pasture for a moment. She thought about a woman who knew exactly what her life looked like. She thought about a man who had finally stopped leaving. She thought about the school and the east window light and the supper table and 3 months of walks on Saturday afternoons and a window frame replaced in November because he had noticed it was letting cold air in. "I think," she said, "that my father has been waiting for that question for 3 years." He nodded. He looked at the pasture. "I'll ask him tomorrow." "He's going to say I told you," she said. "Yes," he said, approximately 398 more times. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. The January night was cold, and the stars were out, and below them the Callaway Ranch was quiet with the specific quality of a place that is being used correctly. They married in April in the Harlow Creek Church on a Saturday, with the Texas spring outside, the wildflowers coming in on the south pasture, the sky enormous and blue. The whole town came. Martha was in the second row. She had been monitoring this situation since September and considered the outcome a personal vindication. The Reverend's wife was in the third row. She had opinions about the flowers, which she had communicated to Nora through the Reverend. Earl sat in the front row with the expression of a man trying to be solemn and not entirely succeeding. Samuel stood at the altar in his good coat. He had bought a second good coat in November, which Nora had pointed out was a significant investment for a man who owned Middlemarch and not much else, and which Samuel had said was a reasonable investment given the circumstances. Nora came down the aisle in a dress the color of the Texas spring, not white, not formal, the particular blue-green of new grass after rain, practical enough to be worn again. She walked past Earl, who was managing his expression with limited success. She reached the altar. She looked at Samuel. He looked at her. After the ceremony, the family walked back to the Callaway Ranch for the small reception Earl had insisted on, the neighbors, the good dishes, the supper table set for more than 3 for the first time in years. On the way, Earl fell into step beside Samuel. He looked at the south fence, clean and tight from one end to the other. He looked at the barn. He looked at the gate that Samuel had replaced in March, which now closed with the solid sound of a gate that would hold. "Samuel," he said. "Yes." "Thank you for helping me with that crate," he said simply. Samuel looked at him. Earl held his gaze with the blue eyes that had been paying attention for 60 years. "Thank you for being the kind of man who does that," Earl said. He walked on ahead to open the gate for the guests. Samuel stood on the road for a moment and looked at the Callaway Ranch, at the fence and the barn and the gate and the house where the lights would be on by evening, and thought about a Tuesday morning and a crate that was too heavy and 30 seconds that had turned into 6 weeks that had turned into this. He walked through the gate. Nora was waiting on the other side. She looked at him. "How many?" she said. "2, he said. Earl said, "I told you," twice on the walk from the church. 397 to go, she said. She took his hand. They went inside. The ranch was better with 3 people. This was not an argument Earl made, it was simply a fact that became visible by summer. The south fence was finished before the winter. The barn roof was done by July. The cattle were in better condition by August than they had been in 4 years. Nora kept teaching. This was not a discussion she and Samuel had, simply understood the way things are understood between 2 people who have listened to each other. The school was hers. She went every morning and came home every evening and marked papers at the kitchen table and planned lessons on the porch when the light was right. Samuel went to the fence and came home every evening. He also finished Middlemarch for the 4th time that winter. Nora found him on the last page on a Thursday evening and sat beside him and did not speak until he was done. When he set the book down, she said, "Better the 4th time?" "Different," he said. "The 4th time you know how it ends, and you're reading for the parts in between." She held her coffee and looked at the south pasture in the January light, then at him. "Samuel," she said. "Yes. My father is going to say, I told you, about 40 more times before the year is out." "Probably," he said. "I want you to know," she said, "that he is right." He looked at her. She held his gaze with the brown eyes that read situations clearly and that were right now just honest. He saw something in 30 seconds that 3 years of careful men missed, she said. He wasn't wrong about the material. She paused. He was right about that and wrong about his authority. Both things are true. Samuel looked at the book in his hands. "Nora," he said. "Yes." "He was also right about the fence," he said. She almost laughed, "The real one." "Terrible shape," she said. "Terrible," he said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. He put his arm around her. Outside, the Harlow Creek January was cold and the south pasture was brown and waiting, and the fence was tight from one end to the other. In the front of the house, Earl Calloway was on the porch with his coffee, listening to the sound of his house when it was full of the right people, which was the sound of nothing in particular, just two people in a kitchen and a January evening, and everything exactly where it was supposed to be. Earl Calloway saw something in 30 seconds. A young man who didn't look around first to see if anyone was watching, who just picked up the other end of a crate because the crate was heavy and there was nobody else. He knew what that meant. He also knew that knowing what a person was made of and knowing who was right for his daughter were two completely different things, and that the second one was above his authority. So he did the only thing he had the right to do. He gave them a fence and a kitchen table and 6 weeks of suppers, and he got out of the way. The rest was theirs. Samuel Grant did not fall in love with Nora Calloway because her father told him to. He fell in love with her because she said what she meant and didn't apologize for it, and read Middlemarch, and knew exactly what her life looked like, and made excellent coffee. He also fell in love with her because she showed him what it meant to stay, not because staying was the only option, but because staying was what you chose when the place was right and the people were right, and you had finally stopped running from the possibility that something could matter. Nora Calloway did not fall in love with Samuel Grant because her father arranged it. She fell in love with him because he heard what she said and understood it and meant it, because he stayed longer than the fence required, because he replaced a window frame in November because he had noticed it was letting cold air in. Earl said, "I told you," and would continue saying it. He was right. He was also right that it was above his authority. Both things were true. And sometimes that is exactly what love looks like. One person seeing what another is made of, stepping back, and trusting the rest to take care of itself.